Alrighty, let's get started. So, welcome everyone to Beyond Text Building a Bulletproof File. My name is Kate. I am a product and content marketing manager here at Encircle. In the last session, we hosted Rethinking Scoping and Estimating. We walked through the nitty-gritties of the differences between scoping and estimating, why they need to be two separate things, and why a scope is so important when it comes to submitting to the carrier. This session covers the practical side of things, so how to solidify that narrative, including strategies to capture more than just notes. With no further ado, let me introduce our guest today. So if you attended the last one, you guys know David. But for new folks, David Herring is the founder of RiseDocument and WriteLoss ClaimRate Inc., the largest provider of property insurance estimates in North America. With 30 years of experience on both sides of complex claims, David holds Level 3 Xactimate certification, professional GC licensure, and has been retained in over 1,000 litigation matters as an expert witness and loss consultant. David is also the author of the upcoming book, Peel the Onion, a methodology guide for negotiating property insurance claims. Welcome, David. It's good to see you back. And
Good
go
to be
ahead.
here.
The floor is yours.
Good to be here. Well, guys, I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that I saw a lot of names that I know in the audience. You know, I was talking about it earlier. Like if you really think about it, probably since I don't know the '70s, people have chased the perfect scope sheet, the perfect way to assess a loss, and it's a forever an improving thing. And today we have technology at a level where it starts modifying our game to bring our game up a great deal. And so let's get into it. So we're going to go over photos done right, video walkthroughs, floor plans, AI documentation, then we're going to do a pretty long Q&A. So let's first jump into photos. Now, there's going to be a lot of you that do this differently. Okay? I'm going to tell you what I suggest. You can take it or you can modify it, but I'm going to tell you the why I do what I do. Okay? When we take pictures, we're going to always do the one thing the adjusters always do. We're going to take the risk picture. It's going to be a picture of the front of the structure every single time. I'm probably jumping around here, and I apologize for that. We're going to want to take pictures pre-loss, demo phase, and post-completion. I would rather you do on that. I would like for you to do 3D on each one of those. That's probably your best possibility. But let's talk about taking actual pictures on your job. We're going to talk about video as well, but let's first talk mostly about pictures. Remember a couple of things about pictures that are going to be really key to you. There's a chance that the carrier folks aren't going to be able to see your videos. There's a chance that the people are not going to be able to see your 3D renderings. They do have a methodology to see your pictures. It's easier for them. Not perfect, but it's easier for them. So what I suggest when you take pictures is you do something that is going to let you walk the entire job in order, where whether it be a person or an AI assistant can be able to tell everywhere you were, when you were there, and what wall it's on. Now, we did this in the 80s because it worked. We do it in the 2000s because it works still. The only thing we changed in the 2000s is we started doing, because we're using more AI assistants, is we started putting labels on the door frames to say which rooms we were in. But this is super easy. Every time you walk into a structure, you're going to take a wide picture from the outside. You're going to step into the room and take a wide picture of the ceiling, a wide picture of the floor. Then you're going to go immediately to your left, and you're going to take a picture of the wall to the left and take a picture of any damage that's there. Then you're going to go to your next one, and the next one, and the next one. And then you're going to do that room by room by room by room. Now, a lot of you will not go into the rooms. that are not specified as damaged. But I will suggest to you that you do all of these pictures just this way for two reasons. One, you don't know about conditions that may actually be important. Like, what if the insured is a hoarder and we can't move things around in the structure? But the second reason it's important is because every time an adjuster goes to a loss, they're obligated to look at the entire structure. And you've got to understand that at a bare minimum, I don't care where you are in the industry, you're doing the carrier's work to some degree. And by giving them all those pictures, you've done a complete job and it makes them more comfortable with what you do. Can we go ahead and go to the pictures and talk about the pictures? You can look at this picture and obviously we've got a water loss, right? But you can also look at this picture and you can also see that it doesn't tell us anything about what's going on in the rest of the room. It hasn't done the function I just told you about, which gave you that wide shot, that lower shot, and all these areas, so that you could have perfect recall on how this room was. Somebody took that picture and thought they were doing a great job, by the way, because they could see all these things that were damaged, but it still left us wanting in a lot of ways. And the idea is that while we don't want to do wide shots normally, we do want to do wide shots to at least figure out what's going, to get a relative understanding of what's where in the room. Let's go to the next one. By any measure, this looks like a great picture, right? And it kind of is. But if we had a loss and we were taking pictures on this loss, we know one thing, that pipe right there is going to be the subject of all conversation that happens on this loss from Jump Street on. So what we're going to do here is we're going to, instead of just taking that picture, we're going to get a close-up of it. We're going to take a picture from behind it as well, underneath it if we can, so we can see it in every way that it busted. For example, it has certain characteristics. If it was freeze, it has certain characteristics if it just failed. And so having those pictures will help avoid those problems down the road where they say it's one thing or the other. And so it's just that when you get to the source of the loss, you've got to look at it from every perspective, because if you don't look at it from every perspective, when we're passing it up the line, it lands on an examiner's desk. They're not going to pay it. I want you to remember something always when we do this work is there was a time in the past where we met with an adjuster and an adjuster came up with a scope, and an adjuster paid it. It basically went, we dealt with one person. But it is most common today that the person that's making that decision will have never walked the loss. And so we have to do more documentation so that we have a non-controvertible scope, because somebody's going to look at it. You've got to go through probably desk adjuster, claims manager, and examiner levels. And so there's at least 3 people that are going to look at that file that have never going to be there. And I think that's just important. Can we go to the next one? This is a real good picture. It shows that a braided line, which is a culprit always, I don't know why they still sell them. But if we were doing this inspection, there's a couple of things we might note here and might make a note of. If you were to look at this, it would probably tell you without a lot of work that this might be a recurring problem, because it looks like somebody DIY'd some drywall repair, in the not too distant past. And so at least that's going to need to be a discussion that's had with the insured, because we're going to need to know what we're looking at to just make sure that nobody's putting it in a classification of a long-term issue. If we don't do that, we probably are putting ourselves in a pretty bad spot. It's incidentally, by the way, you'll also notice here there's something missing in this picture, and there's no shut off on this. So I think that will probably come into play as well. Okay, next up. This is what I was talking to you about a few minutes ago. Now, it's super easy. Risk picture, wide shot of the ceiling, wide shot of the floor, and then shot of each wall and you're looking at those. And you're looking at the damages on each level. Now, since I jumped ahead a little bit here, let me just cover this for you. If I had my way, if I'm going to ever see your file, when it's going to court, when it's going through appraisal, if it's going through some kind of other alternative dispute, I'm going to want to see that you have pictures that are before you start doing any work, after you finish your demo, and after it's repaired. Because if I have that same set and I can set those up properly, nobody's ever going to ask us any questions. I reviewed, before I did this today, I reviewed about 200 files that are in my shop. And I would say of the 200 files in my shop, about 80% of them are just pictures that are just dumped in a bucket. And we could pull metadata to see what day they were. So that helps. But you're as apt to see, pre to in process to completed in the same bucket. And those just should never be in the same bucket. And I think that's something most people really, really screw up. Everybody's willing to go out and take 300 or 400 pictures, but they're not always willing to catalog them in the place they're needing to go. And you should be able today, you should be able to take pictures, and we should be able to use AI solutions to segment those pictures correctly if it can follow a path, and then ultimately have that line up in Xactimate and be in the right location, or in a Dropbox or a Google Drive or on an app, and get it to the right location, so that it makes it easier to annotate the pictures and to know what they are. If we do that correctly, we also can use some automated annotation methods if we've gone to the effort to do that. But you got to do that every single time. And here's the thing I think about a lot. When you go to the doctor, the doctor's going to come in and they're going to, well, before you even get to see the doctor, they're going to take your weight, they're going to take your blood pressure, they're going to take your pulse, they're going to take your temperature, because that's basic triage. They do the same thing no matter why you come to them. And we need to treat every loss we have like triage to do the same exact thing. Because this is prior to us really making any scope notes, making any decisions, doing anything but just collecting the rawest data we can that's going to feed us down the road. Okay, next up. So let's talk about video, and let's talk about where it's appropriate. Okay. I agree that you can go into a loss and you can turn your phone on edge, and you can walk around and talk about the entire loss. You can do a 15 or 20-minute video. Now, when you do the 15 or 20-minute video, just recognize that you've created a big chunky file that is not as easy to process normally as it would be if they were shorter files. What I have my people do, and I've been doing videos of losses for 10 years, is we start if we have exterior, we do exterior, we do roof if we have roof, and then we do interior, and we usually break that into like 3 videos of the interior. If it's like multi-locations, we'll do it, break it down by room. That way we've got very segmented videos so somebody doesn't have to look at the whole video to figure that out. It makes it easy for us to label it, upload it in the right place. So when we use an AI assistant, it can pull that information out. Now, I want you to think about this when you talk about video. We're going to do the same thing when we talk about audio. If you're going to walk the loss, I want you to remember that you're telling a story. As you tell a story, that story doesn't say we're going to have to remove 32 square feet of half-inch drywall and put two air movers and 1 DHU and do containment on the end of each room. Your story is a great deal different than that. And let me explain it to you like this. If any of you have children or have had children that were 12 years old, we've all been children that were 12 years old. You can get a 12-year-old to do almost anything if you are explicit with them. And when you do this walkthrough, when you do this narrative, when you tell the story of the loss, what you want to do when you're doing this is you want to actually tell the story, and you want to tell it like you're telling it to a 12-year-old. So if you're walking the loss, you want to say, I walked in the dining room and I saw no damage. I walked in the main hall and I saw damage on the ceiling and on the wall on the left-hand side. I haven't found where the source is just yet, but I'm finding that water is there. I go to the next room and I say, this mimics what we saw on the other side because we see damage to the wall on this side too. And then you continue to tell that story. That story, that audio that you're doing right there, the video is catching details, but that audio that you're doing is perhaps the most giving thing that we've ever done when we assess claims. Period. End of story. Because when we parse that out, that voice that you put in there, when you explained it like that, is going to speak to our AI assistants, and it's going to write a scope that makes sense and that we can also use to communicate back to the carrier in a voice that works very good for what they need to see. It's going to tell the story. So a lot of people want to walk a loss and want to specify every single thing about that loss when they're walking it. And I'm telling you that it's more important that you tell the story of the loss than it is for you to go through and run through a bunch of line items and a bunch of equipment. That can come after, but your first cause is to tell the story. And the story can be told really well with video, but depending on the system you're using, you want to calibrate your video smaller instead of bigger. In our world, we get a 10-minute video and it takes us processing time about 4 times longer. We get a 4-minute video, 3-minute video, and it moves really quickly. That's in my workflow. That might not be in yours, but I think that's the first place to go. Go ahead. We talked about pictures a few minutes ago, and I wanted you to explain to you what I do, what we do, or I do, and my people do, no matter what we do. Okay, is I don't care if it's an interior water loss. I'm going to still take a picture of the front of the building, the side of the building, the back of the building, and the other side of the building, just because I may need it, and it takes no time to do. When you catch a loss and you document it on that level, you get different respect when it lands at the carrier every time. I've got some good friends that work at the carrier and work as examiners, and they always tell me the same thing that the loss that's documented in a way they cannot fight it is the loss they pay without fighting it. And that if we're always being fought on something, chances are good there's something we could do to could avoid that. And that's just one of the many things that you could do. We talk about being IICRC certified, but I've watched so many people just assume things about the extent of the water damage and the location of the water damage. I'll give you a great example. I had an expert job recently where the mitigation crew had come in, they had come in, and to their credit, they had showed up to the loss like 35 minutes after it was found. So some of the water had been there long enough to be Cat 3, some of it hadn't been, but they had come in and pulled some baseboards, not pulled any drywall, done some drying, antimicrobial, took out a floor that was just happened to be damaged but was on its way out anyway, and just made quick work of it. 3 months later, everybody in the house is sick because nobody on the mitigation crew, thinking that they could just get in and out really easy and it's an easy water loss, wasn't able to see that the back of the cabinets, which couldn't be seen from the front, was completely eaten with mold. And we had someone in the house that had mold sensitivity. And the real story here is that they knew where the water was coming from. It was coming from an HVAC system. They didn't have a choice but to go all the way to the back of the cabinets because they couldn't have seen behind those cabinets without at least removing some drywall, using a borescope, doing any number of things. But they had to move something to get there. And we used to have this thing that we did in the industry where the carrier would always pay for us to do invasive testing or invasive discovery. And I think you need to force that issue with the carrier a lot of times because you have to know the extent of the loss. If you cannot see it, if you cannot touch it, if you cannot use a moisture meter on it, you cannot call it not okay. Incidentally, by the way, that loss that they lined up for about $7,000 turned into a $79,000 loss before they did ALE, which was another 30,000. So it was sizably a different job, and all because somebody didn't go all the way to the path of the loss. Incidentally, they also developed a really crappy scope too, so they didn't tell the story of their loss very well either. After you do your initial walkthrough, where you get that narrative, you're going to have to talk about your equipment. I want you to think about this and just remember this. Remember that in our industry, we've had a push down or a slow or muting of the growth in wages for our techs. In a lot of cases, we're having a loss leader when we're using our techs. On our equipment, we've had higher numbers. And so what happens is on every job we do, those machines that we set out there are the most important thing we have because that's where our money is. And that's just the honest truth. But because of that, we have to do graduate level documentation on everything we do. Because there's always going to be a thought, because they know that's where your money is, that you're using too much equipment. So part of writing that narrative initially and justifying your equipment thereafter, the narrative that you did earlier, the story that you did earlier is going to justify your use of your equipment. But if you don't do that story done like we talked about, what's going to happen to you, and I mean every single time, is they're not going to want to pay it because they don't understand the narrative of the story. And just imagine if you did what I said, on this, you could take an AI tool. You could pitch a scope out for an estimator. You could have the equipment justification spit out of that AI tool. You could have the pictures landing in the right place so that AI tool could annotate them. And you could have that same tool write an email to the carrier that used your narrative and used all your equipment details. And you could do that in the stroke of a few buttons, whether you use an app or some other systems. But you've collected this data that you get to use on a level you never got to use it before. And I think it's just, it's mind blowing to me, because everything I ever wanted, we can do now. And we can get there a lot of different ways. I wanted to just cover one thing here on pictures in general that you're going to want to be aware of. If you can take your pictures and upload them to some third party so that the provenance of those pictures go to somebody else to authenticate that they were taken at a certain time and they weren't altered, it's going to become more and more important. They did a poll, I think the New York Times did a poll about 2 months ago, and they said that 2 out of 10 people would use AI to alter a loss picture, a claim picture, to bolster their claim. And so by being able to say that the pictures were uploaded to a system, nobody's ever going to be able to say that you altered an image. It will not be long before you get accused of that, no matter what you do. But you need to have a good answer for it, because that's coming. Matter of fact, I have a litigation that I'm being deposed on in 2 weeks, where actually in this case, the carrier accused the mitigation contractor of altering images of the damage to get their monies up. They didn't alter them, but what they did do is they had them on their phone, and they traded them between phones, and it didn't have good metadata, and it would probably look like something had been done. But they didn't do anything wrong. What they should have done is they should have had an app, or they should have had a system where they could have uploaded those pictures. I mean, they could have had something as simple as Company Cam, had Encircle, something like that, to just move stuff up. Would have been better. It wouldn't have been as good if you were doing something like Dropbox or Google Drive, but still, that's better than just having them sitting on a phone. Because as you know, we can do almost anything on our phone. We can ask ChatGPT to make me look like I have horns, and you could do it in about 3 seconds. I think some people think I have horns. Anyway, next up. When you walk the loss, you're going to want to do this because you've always done this. You're going to want to go in and you're going to want to say, not that the drywall is saturated to 18 inches, but you're going to want to say that the drywall is saturated to 18 inches. And we need to do this and this and this and this and this and this. Initially, we don't do that. But what you are going to do while you're doing that initial walkthrough is you are going to be thinking about what equipment you're going to do, and you're going to be thinking about category and class. You know that of all those files that I looked at, only 22% of those files dealt with class. They always just dealt with category. And I think we need to start thinking about class, because building assemblies push our drawing plans. And the reason why a lot of our drawing plans fail is because we didn't pay attention to building assemblies. And the other thing to remember when we're calling out equipment in our initial walkthrough, just remember, you're not usually doing the math that's necessary as you're doing that initial walkthrough. you want to at least have a more deliberate process. We've all got tools that can help us do that. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying be really, really careful about just deciding on equipment without doing the math and without figuring out what you actually need in total. Because if you go too far into it, you're in a mess. Let's go on and let's talk about floor plans. Now, when you have floor plans, I just want you to remember this, okay? This is super simple, but most people get it wrong. Where are we normally working in a structure? We're normally working somewhere that is close to water. So that's going to be toilets, dishwashers, cabinets, vanities, tubs, showers, all of this stuff. Everywhere there's water in this building, we need to be actually putting in the cabinets, putting in the toilets, and putting the details in our sketches, not just simply drawing out the rooms and being done with it. It takes almost no time to do it, but it has to be coherent. And you can get somebody else to do your sketch and pull it straight in. Encircle's got some cool things they're doing in that too. But as long as it's got the full details of where that water is, I think that's where you win the biggest. And I think I look at, like, I was looking at these ones today before I got on this thing, and most people don't put that in their estimates. They just don't. And I would put them in a different color and I would light them up so that people can see what it is. And it's a good time, if you can do it, is to go ahead and annotate your sketch to put the appropriate colors for the grade of water that you have. And I think we don't recognize that essentially everybody that looks at our file, we all went to the same grammar school, we all went to the same high school, and we all understand color coding, and we all understand pictures that have everything in place, and we all understand maps. And I just think we need to play that game. Let's go on to the next one because I want to talk about the common floor plan mistakes. You're going to see adjuster pushback very consistently. When you scanned after demo, I need to see what's actually been removed before I can approve the scope. Missed adjacent rooms. Why are you billing for X square feet of equipment when the affected room is Y? No containment shown. I don't see justification for the containment line. No material labels. What kind of flooring was there? I need to know before I can approve the replacement. No equipment on the plan. 5 air movers in a small room seems excessive. In fact, I had a guy last week. He told us that our equipment allocations were massive. We asked him what the calculation for massive was. He wasn't impressed. The furniture blocked the scan. Your dimensions don't match the original plans, so let's reconcile. Basically, remember, if we talked about it before, if you want to win, if you take the same pictures in 3D, for example, at each stage of your job, before, after demo, and after repair, it's hard for you to lose, but you're always going to get a pushback. If somebody's pushing back on you about floor plan or pictures, that's because you haven't done your job. It's usually not because they're not doing their job. I know that there are crazy people that we have to deal with in this industry. I had a guy call me one time, and he said, "I need you to work out a problem I have." And I said, "What's that?" He said, my one of my managers got on a FaceTime with a certain third-party reviewer and referred to her in a term that no rational human would ever use for a female. And I need to know how to fix that. And I said, you have to fire him like now and apologize. But there's always going to be somebody pushing back on you in a way that's going to drive you crazy. I know that, but we got to figure out ways not to let them do that as often. Can we go on to the next one? Okay. When you are looking at any tool, you need to look at the speed in the field, the turnaround time, the accuracy, the learning curve, the total cost, and does it wind up in your workflow? Does it wind up in Xactimate? Does it wind up to your estimator? And I think you can use this. This is a metric that we use in my own shop for anything we do, for any kind of tool that we're using. Is how does it fit within these? And more and more we're going to see that we have apps out there that will do all of these things at the same time. And I think that's the way to fit it. But because we can always run, you can always go with the brand newest version of AI and go down the rabbit hole and build your own code for some crazy ass expensive CRM that you make to do all of this. But you're going to spend all your time doing that and burning up your credits instead of actually doing the job that you need to do. And I know that all of us get eaten up by subscriptions, but the only people getting eaten up by subscriptions are the people who aren't job costing those out in their jobs to begin with. Every job you do should have every one of your subscriptions that touches that affecting that job in some way to address the price. We could spend hours on pricing, and I'm a price specialist. I do a lot of that, but that's something you definitely need to deal with. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so let's just talk about AI documentation in a way that makes this super simple. If all I did in the world tomorrow is go take these pictures and walk the loss and record it on Otter, on some kind of note taker, on Encircle, on Dropbox, on whatever CRM you're using. If I did nothing but that, I would still wind up with a better scope and a better narrative than we have ever been able to create. I want you to also remember this. This bugs the crap out of some restorers, and I'm sorry if it does. But you have some very skilled people that are very good at going out and walking losses and writing up scopes and getting everything ready to go. I want you to remember that with the advent of AI and being able to capture everything, what we're actually able to do is you're actually able to put somebody out there that's not as certified, that has better bedside manners to deal with the insured, to go do that initial assessment to pull all this basic data in. And that takes an entirely different price point when you're going out to do the initial assessment. And it also lets you slightly change who you're sending to do that work initially. And I hate to say it this way, but I mean, they're usually going to be cheaper because they're not highly technical people. I'll give you a great example. I had a guy that worked for me for years. He still works for me. That when he went to work for me, he didn't understand building stuff very, very well. And it was not uncommon that he would turn his video or his audio on to something and say, I know this is damaged. I just don't know what the Dumaflachi is, but it's attached to this and this and this and this and this, and it's attached to this damage. And just by doing that, we could turn that into a scope. And now we can turn it into a scope without having to even slow down. We can get it into a scope and out the door and into estimation like that. We can get something that comes from the field into estimation usually in minutes rather than days. And that's changing everything. Can you go to the list after that? You want a photo if you're gonna be pulling a photo. If you're gonna be pulling photos, you want to be able to give them classification. If you're pulling your equipment. You want to be able to see everything about that so that it can be cataloged as well. I cannot tell you, you've heard me say this over and over today. I cannot tell you how important it is for you to record your audio. There's nothing more important that you can do than that right there, besides probably getting the measurements of the building. If you get that recording, it will change the scale at which you operate. I could promise you this. If you will do what I just said, and you will take that audio transcript and you will turn it into something your people that write the scopes could do, and you turn it into the narrative that you turn into the carrier, I will bet you that most of your jobs will go better. We have this problem. I spent about 28 years of my career begging people around me to give me a brief. A brief. Just tell me the high points of this. And I think in all the hundreds of people I've employed, I've had 3 that could do it really well. And I think at the end of the day, what the AI has done is given us the ability to do the brief in a way that is better than we ever could. Just a by the by, guys, if you're using AI tools and you're using AI tools that are off the shelf, I need you to remember that if you run the same thing through those twice and you don't get the exact same result, then that tool is not reliable. You should get the exact same result over and over again with the same data. And you should test any system you're using so that it's giving you the same data over and over again. Because if it doesn't, it's going to be a problem. The other thing I'd tell you more than anything about your communication, tell it not to do M dashes, please. And tell it to write it like you, not like the AI. And it will figure it out before long. If you need me to help you with that at some point, contact me. I'll tell you how to do that more clearly. If you can imagine, I'm just going to tell you in my shop, and I'm going to talk about this from my appraisal expert witness and umpire work. If you can imagine, because we use AI tools, just like I've been telling you, when we send a communication, it's instantly in our management system. When we change the status on a project, whenever it gets pictures to catalog, it changes the status on it. If it needs to go somewhere else, if it needs to tell somebody to bill something, if it needs to create billing, if it needs to create a narrative, if it needs to send something to the insured and say we did the following things, it does all those things. It does about 45 different things automatically that we don't touch. And so what happens is in that end of my business, I have a business of 10 people that would normally be about 15. And those 10 people will get stronger and stronger and stronger. And I have the most cohesive team because I'm not having to grow new talent all the time. And that's where this really changes everything. And I think that's what you should be doing. And you should embrace this technology on that level, because at the end of the day, when you get that audio and you add a little video to it, when you get the pictures in the proper form so they can be annotated, when you get everything in where you can send it to scopes and you can put it out in drafts to go to your principal and interested parties, you win. You win because all of you, I'll bet you there aren't three people in our game that are really good at communicating and being really efficient with all the other things you do. And I'm the same way. I'm terrible. I need to write 10 emails right now that I haven't written. But you get my point. So are we about ready to do some Q&A?
Yeah, there was a couple of more slides, but I also realized everyone here is super, super busy. So I will send the slide deck out to everyone as well so we can review it. One of the things that you will be receiving is AI vendor evaluation checklist or rubric if you're a millennial like I am. All right.
I told her that was the proof she was
The dead
proof
giveaway.
that she was a millennial because she used the word rubric. Like
All
I bet
right.
Andy McCabe doesn't know what a rubric is unless it was his kids who did it. And I saw
Also,
him in.
Andy, I do like my M dashes. All right. So when you all filled out your registration form there were a few people who left some questions. So, David, there's a couple that I want to go through if that's okay.
Please.
The first one is Kelly from AJA Development Group. So, what key documents should be in each file? What is your thought on master service agreements for clients and addendums for the type of service provided? So, I guess that's two questions,
Okay.
but
Okay. Well, first of all, I love master service agreements. I think master service agreements are wonderful because they get you out of the contracting business, and it makes there's no reason why you shouldn't do that. The second thing is that on every single file you do, no matter what, you're going to take the pictures like we talked about, and you're going to take audio to basically tell the story of the loss. Those two things are always going to be there because those are going to get you the rest of the things you need on the loss. You've got to collect that in the field, and then you can do everything back at the desk that will change the outcome. It to large part, what we've done is made something more. It's easier in the field, and like one thing we've got to do, and this is something that Encircle's been working on, and I've really liked talking to them about this, is we need to get out of this zone of sending an estimate 2 weeks after we did the work and calling it an invoice when we could send an estimate right away and then have an invoice to follow it, like normal companies do.
excellent. Okay. Um, there's this question that has come in a couple of different times, but the one I have in front of me is Mitch from Disaster Response. He says, I have technicians that do not follow through on all the tasks that can be done. How do you encourage them to do that? And another one's added, and stay consistent with that routine.
I I have a rule of thumb. If it's not automatic, if it's not just second nature to them, they will never do it. And so if they're not doing it, it's because you have the wrong people or you haven't made it second nature. And if you went to any if you worked at any of the places where they have any like Bath and Body Works and Victoria's Secret, all those places, if you went to work there, you're going to be met by a manager when you walk in the door. And the manager's going to say, okay, you remember we have to do this and this and this and this and this. And these are the new things you have to do today, in addition to these things. And it's going to get said to you every single time. And it doesn't matter if you've been there 600 days, it's still going to get said to you. And what we notice most of the time is we allow people not to do their jobs and we do not continue to put them on it. What I do with my people, just so you know, is I call them up and say, tell me what your job is today. And if they can't tell me all the bellwethers they're supposed to do, then I know that we have some training to do. And we are piss poor in our industry at doing training. We say we're not because we go get people IICRC trained, but I'm talking about people in our workflow. We need to look at this more like we're football teams and less like we're companies. Everybody's got to be on the same page no matter what. The smart people and the dumb people have to understand the same thing.
Good way of putting it. Okay, I have a couple questions left here. So we have a bunch in the Q&A. We may not have time to get to everybody, but I can, if David is okay with it, share his contact information. You guys can ask him directly.
Sure.
Um, so let me, there's a couple of really interesting ones that I want to dive into more. One of them you kind of touched on when you were speaking. So Jacob says, are short videos by room better than a whole house, or would a video by floor be a reasonable middle ground? And what time limit do you
A
usually
video
stay under?
by floor would be fine. If you've taken all the pictures and you've gotten all this annotation anyway, then really what you're doing is you're giving more context to the video. So wherever the context with the video is good. My only problem with video is sometimes, I know this sounds terrible, but a lot of times when we do video, we don't do as much voice on the video as we would if we were just doing audio. So as long as you're producing that information, that context, so that what comes after it will do that. I I sometimes will do just a one by floor or one by room of damage, depending on the level of damage. It just depends on it. But I'm just saying there's no problem with you every time you open a video saying where you are and producing it for the next thing. Works every time. So anything that your workflow allows. My workflow just hates long videos, personally.
Fair enough. Okay. I have one question from our friend Mark. Mark, I did see you. I know you really like our webinars, so I was so glad to see you as always on board. So Mark asks, from the examiner side, what are the 2 to 3 most common documentation gaps that give desk reviewers cover to cut a file, even when the work was done correctly?
Okay. I want you to remember that if your hydro reports, if your data reports aren't consistent, it's the first thing they're going to do because they think you're a liar to begin with. Because remember, they think you're trying to push equipment. So if you have this data and it's right as rain and it's very easy for you to justify, then it's good. Look, I'm going to tell you, if you want them to pay your claim, I'm going to tell you something to do that makes them pay your claim. If you will, every single day, starting with the first day you're there, issue the adjuster a burn report that says we showed up today on Miss Smith's loss, reported it this day on this time, we showed up, we found this, we did these things, we deployed this equipment, we deployed this materials, these people, and this labor, and our burn rate today was blank. Our burn rate should fall over the next 4 days. We will be back here at 8 a.m. in the morning. My phone number is this, my email is this. Please contact me if you have questions or would like to meet with me. I will be available to you. If you will do that, when that lands on the examiner's desks and there's 4 days of burn reports that says, hey, you're spending money, and you also ultimately have all your telemetry, all your data, pictures of your job and everything, and you start turning that in like that, even before you've turned in an estimate, a piece of paper, and Xactimate. If you will say that, they have a hard time not paying it because you gave them notice they were spending money. And keep in mind, most of the problem that all of us have is when we send the $13,000 bill and they didn't know it was coming. But if I knew I spent $3,000 today and I was going to spend probably $2,000 tomorrow and $1,700 the next and probably $1,400 the next and $800 the next, that's a different arrangement altogether. That's never going to a lawsuit. It's never going to appraisal. It's going to get paid. What we normally do is we don't do that communication, and we don't provide all the data on what we did, and the data meaning something that they can understand. Because keep in mind, if the examiner only looks at your file for 10 minutes, if you can write them a narrative that explains what you did, you win. Nobody talks to anybody in the industry like they're humans. If you will treat them like humans, they produce different results for you. And I talk to examiners all the time that tell me that when it can be put into a brief for them and they have the data backed up for it, they always win. And most folks don't do that.
Excellent. There is one question. I know we won't be able to answer it today, but I just thought it was funny. How to deal with adjusters. So I think that might be something we can talk about at a later date. I think that is sometimes generally a frustration, but chatting with you before we hopped on today and really talking about that human element and speaking to adjusters like they're humans, because Maybe you don't want to believe it, but they are humans.
Yeah, find something in common with them no matter what you do.
Yeah.
Something in common, and don't ever get mad, ever.
And alrighty, everyone have a fabulous day. And thank you so much, David, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Take care.